Hello there. My name is Mary Dees, and I am the founder of the Love of My Life to Death podcast. And I am here today with Pam Wyatt, who has been a friend of mine for over 30 years. And I am just so grateful that she's taken her time out today to share her story about the loss of her sister and also the domestic violence that occurred several years ago. And we are just grateful for having this opportunity and to learn more about her sister, Patricia, close to me because my sister was named Patricia as well. So we have that in common. 30 years of friendship. Who would have thought that we would come back together, Pam, after
Yeah,
such a tragedy? And
yeah.
I just want to thank you for agreeing to do this. And I open the floor for you to share about your lovely sister, your family, your mom, where things have gone since this occurred. So if you can just start at the beginning and let us know how you became a person that had to experience domestic homicide at at the prime of our lives, and
Yeah.
how that's changed you to, the person you are today. So thank you for being here, Pam.
Well, thank you for having me, Mary. Who would have thought that our paths would cross again with this in common? It's you never think it's going to be your family because you hear about it on the news, you see the articles. I mean, I was a teacher at the time, and one of my topics with my class was healthy dating, relationships, warning signs. So here I am teaching this topic, and then it happens to my own family. And you talk about a shock. Um, I never thought in a million years, I'm a teacher, my family shouldn't be going through this. And you know, although it's been 18 years, um, it doesn't seem like 18. It seems like it was just a couple years ago that we lost her. Um, and her four kids are grown now. They have families. It's just hard you know to keep going back through that. And believe it or not, I'm glad you have me on. Talking is therapy, because you can speak to people who can empathize with your feelings, because people go, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, but like you not going through it, they don't really know how you feel, and that a part of your family was taken from you unexpectedly and no warning signs. Well, I can talk about some of the warning signs after the fact that I discovered, but I don't know where you want me to start. I can go back to that night, where I was, what my family was doing. Is that where you want me to start, Mary?
That would be great. If you could just, take us back to that point where you found out and then how you discovered what had happened,
Okay.
then the history of their relationship. So let's start there.
Okay. Okay. Well, it was September 22nd, 2006, about 9:20 p.m. Um, my my family, my mom, stepdad, I have a Down syndrome sister, Robin, was all at my mom's duplex. They had friends over, and my uncle and two of Trisha's kids. They were teenagers, 13 and 16. So they're there. There was a gathering. My brother was actually and his wife were on the way to my mom's house in Winter Park. I was buying a truck at, excuse the dogs, I'm sorry. I was buying a truck at David Moss Toyota in Sanford. And there wasn't a phone signal the whole time. So when when I'm outside of the dealership, my phone is blowing up. And I got these screams over the voicemails like, Pam, oh my gosh, what, Trisha's been shot. And I was like, what is going on? I was freaking out. So I looked at the salesman and I said, you have to put this truck somewhere. I said, I have to go. I said, there's been a family emergency. So I just left the dealership with my friend and flew down I-4 from Sanford. I found out, they told me that my mom was helicoptered to RMC, and of course, everybody else was still at the house. So I'm on my way, being the passenger, of course, trying to decide, do I go see my mom who was shot in the face, or do I go to the house where probably 20 people are? So I'm having to make this decision going down I-4. So I decide, well, I need to go see my mom. My mom, and let me just go back to, now that you know where I was, let me go back to what had happened. My ex-brother-in-law, William, I don't like saying his name, but had been there earlier in the day to my mom's duplex. He knew we had moved my sister, and I'm sorry if we had moved my sister to my mom's house because she had finally got the courage to say, Pam, I'm afraid of him. He scares me. He scares the kids. So, well, I'm like, oh, well, we can take care of that. So me and my stepdad, we got our trucks. We went to her trailer over there in Winter Park. I told her, go in and get the bare essentials. Just go get clothes for the kids. Don't worry about anything else. She goes, what if he's there? I said, I don't care if he's there. He goes, we're with you. Just go get your stuff. So fortunately, he wasn't there. So she grabbed her clothes, her cat, and we go to my mom's. And this was the summer prior to her death. So she's at my mom's, and I'm thinking, okay, everything's going to be fine because she's not alone with him. So my mom had a gathering for my little sister's birthday. It was July 14th, and we'd already moved my sister there. And Will happens to show up that day. And he had my sister's paycheck and her keys to the van. And I happened to be there, and I go, Trish, she was talking about no money. And I go, well, where's your paycheck? She goes, he has it. And I'm like, well, why does he have your paycheck? Oh, he always gets my paycheck. And I was like, no, that's not right. And he had the keys to the van that she used for the kids. So he walks up, and I look at him and I go, do you have my sister's paycheck? And he kind of just shook his head. I go, well, she needs that check. You need to give it to her. And he did. And I said, she needs the keys to the van as well. I said, now you can leave because you're not wanted here. You need to go before we call the police. So he left. He didn't cause any kind of disturbance. He just walked off and left. So that was the last time I saw my sister, was that day. And so I go about my business, school starts, the teaching in 2006, and that September 22nd rolls around when I was buying my truck that night. He had gone to a pawn shop earlier that day and was in that pawn shop for hours, just looking around at the weapons, the guns he could buy. Because you guys know about this so-called 3-day waiting period. Well, I find out it's only for certain weapons. It's not for all of them, because otherwise he wouldn't have been able to get it that day. He took his last paycheck because he worked on and off. He didn't have a steady job. He would move her around the county so we couldn't really find her. He would do these sneaky things with her. So he goes into this pawn shop in Apopka, shoot straight, and he's on camera. This came up in court. He was on camera for hours, and he finally chose a Mossberg short-handled shotgun, which I wasn't aware. You don't have a 3-day waiting period for that. So he was able to walk out of there that same day with that weapon. And little did we know he was going to use it that night. He had planned all this out. It was premeditated. So he goes up to my, later that night, he drives his truck over to the end of my mom's street. Now, all my family, my mom and her friends, Trisha and her kids are there, gathered, having a good time. He shows up. This is what now I wasn't there, but this is the story that I was told many, many times. He walks up, he's wearing all black. He puts the gun on the side of the house because he knew she was there. He had called and knocked on the window at night and was harassing her. And my mom called Seminole County and said, you know, my sister's husband is harassing her, won't leave her alone. What can she do? Or what can we do? And they're like, well, ma'am, he has to do something first to get the restraining order. And my mom just out of the top of her head says, what does he have to do? Kill her? So, and I'm sure she regrets today ever saying that. So, she's on Trish, my sister, 39 years old, is on the carport with her daughter and my little sister Robin and my uncle. And Will had gone and put the gun on the side of the house. He walks up to the carport and he does the little finger movement like, I want to talk to you. And my niece Rachel said, Mom, you don't have to go talk to him. So she stepped forward toward him and they had words. And I'm only going to imagine he probably said something like, are you sure you want to divorce me? Are you sure about this? And then Trish rolled her eyes and he left. Well, everybody thought he left. So Trish and my niece head into the kitchen, which was off the carport. And all of a sudden they hear what they thought were fireworks. He was clearing the gun. He had got the gun, came back around and opened fire. And my uncle dove behind the car and Will kept firing. And my mom, she's in the house thinking it's fireworks. So she calls for my stepdad and says, Pat, somebody's shooting off fireworks outside. So my mom opens the door. She's on the phone with my brother. She cracks open the door. Bam! She gets shot in the head, falls down on the carport wall. The door is still standing open. He keeps firing, and my sister's standing right there in front of the fridge. He keeps firing. And then my stepdad comes running out of the back room. As he's shutting the door, Will keeps firing until he empties the gun. Because we saw the door, he used buckshot and birdshot in that gun. So he was determined that people were good, he was determined to kill her. So he opens fire and he just turns and walks and leaves. And so I get the call. I'm flying down I-4. I go see my mom, and then the story was Trish was shot in the back and spun around in the chest and fell over, of course, on the kitchen floor. Bullet holes were in the refrigerator, went through into the bedroom. My nephew was watching TV about probably 20 feet away, and my niece had been standing next to my sister. I was told that by my niece that Trish had kind of pushed her hand and moved Rachel out of the way. So my niece had to experience that trauma. My nephew, my mom's friend, Beth, grabbed the kids and put them in the bathroom because she didn't know what was going on. So she just said, here, grabbed them, put them in the bathroom till all of it was over. When the Seminole County showed up, of course, total chaos. My mom is helicoptered to RMC. She never lost consciousness. She had gotten a bullet, gunshot blast to the face. My brother's on his way there, so he was en route. The kids they put towels over their heads to walk out over their dead mother's body. And I'm sure that will always be, something they're never, ever going to forget. And just total chaos at my mom's house. And I go to RMC. There's a detective there. And he interviews me about Will and what I knew of him and my sister and the relationship. And because my mom is waiting for surgery. She's in the ER with a towel wrapped around her head. She was awake. She was conscious. We couldn't see her face though. Me and my brother were there. My sister from Vegas had not gotten there yet. She was flying in the next day. So me and my brother are like, Mom, we're here. And she's just like, okay, you know, and I don't even know if she grieved. It's really hard to tell. But so of course, Mom was in the hospital for many days. She had to have her left eye removed and part of her jaw and her cheek, lost hearing in her left ear. That woman is a walking miracle. She was 63 years old at the time, never lost consciousness, went through 7 hours of surgery, was in the ICU. My sister Juanita from Vegas shows up the next day. We go in to see Mom, and the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life was tell my mom when she asked, she goes, well, how's Trisha? Where's Trisha? And we looked at each other and we're thinking, well, she's in ICU. So if she goes into heart failure, she's there at the hospital already. So we had to tell her, we go, well, Mom, Trish didn't make it. And I don't even know if it sunk in. And she goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, Trish died. Will shot her like he shot you. And we just paused. And I don't even know to this day if my mom grasped the whole process. But then later she goes, well, why did I live and Trish have to die? And I said, well, Mom, that's not up to us. That was up to God. And I can tell you one reason is Robin, my Down syndrome sister who lives with my mom. I said, Robin still needs you. She needs you. We need you. She goes, well, it's just not fair. I said, no, it's not fair. And, hopefully justice will be served. So, that happened. And then he goes to Seminole County. They find him 6 hours later. He was riding around Maitland. He had gone to Winn-Dixie, bought some beer. He was celebrating, drinking. They found his car at the motel, which he had rented a motel room. They found him. He had ammo in his room. We fear that he wasn't done. But they got him. They arrested him. And on the way to Seminole County Jail, he's talking with the deputy so nonchalant, like, well, I had to kill her because she spent all my money. And we're like, she didn't have any money. His mother had died in a drunk driving accident. So she owned real estate in Seminole County, and that's how he met Trish. She was renting one of his mother's houses. And when his mother passed, everything was put into his name, his property. So he met Trish, and he would go put notes in the mailbox and just be real creepy. And my sister was with her boyfriend at the time and didn't think anything of it. Well, he kept coming around, and eventually, I guess he lured her away from David to be with him. And he had a 2-story house, one of his mom's houses in Sanford. And my sister's kids were young. So they had never lived like that before, a 2-story house. He had gotten money. He was buying him things left and right. And my sister was like, wow, she had never had that kind of life. We gone over there for a Thanksgiving. I remember a Thanksgiving at her house. She was very proud. Look at my house. I got 2 stories. In our family, that was a big deal. So, I didn't suspect anything at that time, nothing at all. But as the years went by, he had done things that we did not find out till later at the trial, and through her kids, we found out things that he had done to her during those times. He had gotten her drunk one night and made her tattoo his name on her leg. Big 3-inch letters, William, on her leg. Now, there's not one person in my family that has a tattoo. So we did not know this because Trish always wore pants. She never wore shorts. So nobody knew she had this tattoo. William, and when they arrested him, he had a tattoo across his abdomen that said slave master. So here he is. He's got this slave master tattoo, makes her tattoo his name because he wanted her as his property. She has to wear black. He made her dye her hair black. She had a collection of angels. She wasn't allowed to put her angels up. He did what you call this black magic, witchcraft kind of stuff. He would move her around in the county. They would stay at a hotel for a week, then they'd go and rent a house, and then they wouldn't pay the rent, and then they'd get kicked out. So we never really knew exactly where Trish was. We knew she was in the county. She'd show up at my mom's going, Mom, you know, we got kicked out. Can we stay here? So Mom would let them stay at her place. And one time I remember Mom didn't know where Trish was. And I go, well, what do you mean you don't know where she is? Well, they moved again. So somehow I tracked her down in Altamont. And I found the house, and I go up to the house, and she's there with a couple of her kids. And she opens the door, and the look of fear on her face. I was like, hi, Trish. And she's like, hi, what are you doing here? I said, we've been trying to find, I'm sorry. We've been trying to find you. And she's like, well, you have to be quiet. And I said, why? She goes, because he's sleeping. And all the curtains were closed. It was so dark in the house. So I'm whispering. She goes, yeah, he doesn't want to be woken up. So you have to whisper. I'm thinking, okay. And it's the middle of the day. I'm thinking, well, that's weird. So we chatted. I said, we just wanted to know where you were and how you were doing. So at that time, I felt that this is just a weird situation. This guy is keeping her, you know, under his wing. He didn't really want her going to Christmas gatherings. If he came with her, he would stand off in the corner, and he was a watcher. He would just light up a cigarette, go stand on the wall, and he'd watch everybody. He wouldn't say anything. So we did not feel any threat from him, but of course we didn't live her life. And we found out that he had threatened her with the gun before. He said, if you ever leave me, I'll kill your kids. Luckily, they weren't his biological children. Their biological father lives in Winter Springs. So luckily, we don't have that bloodline with him. So of course, what mother isn't going to protect her kids? What mother is going to leave a situation putting her kids at risk? And a lot of people over the years have said, well, why didn't she just leave? And I'm sure your sister, you know, you understand the same thing, that you don't just up and leave an abusive relationship. Trish was scared. She feared. So when she got the courage that day to tell my brother and me she wanted out, we thought, wow. She had just got her preschool teaching degree from Seminole Community College. She loved teaching little kids. They were 3-year-olds in Longwood. Found out he would go and sit across the street in his car and wait for her to leave work and follow her. He had gone into her daycare asking to speak to her, and her boss is like, you can't be here, sir, you need to leave. So he had followed her. He had stalked her, and she continued with her life the best she could, got her degree, and, you know, got the certificate that summer. And then, you know, a couple months later, she's gone. And, you know, I'm a school teacher, and all of a sudden, nothing else mattered. I mean, I could care less about my job. We didn't get bereavement leave then. We had to use any sick time we had accumulated. Over the years, you get 10 sick days a year, and if you don't use them, they go to the next year. So I had, in 2006, I had been teaching 10, 15, 20, about 20 years then. So I had a lot of days added up. Well, the night it happened, I just called my friend and I go, my sister was murdered. I will not be into work, and I don't know when I'll be back. Boom. And I hung up. So work was the last thing on my mind. Now we have my mom, who was in the hospital for like 7 to 8 days, dealing with her, dealing with my little sister Robin, who doesn't understand any of it and why Trish was gone. And then her kids having to go through, what do we do with her now? She had mentioned to them being cremated. Of course, we didn't know that. I thought she would want to be buried, but she told her kids, no, if anything happened, just cremate me. So they had her cremated, and they decided to go to the beach. And I know it's illegal to put ashes out in the ocean, but that's what they wanted to do. So we went before sunrise, and right as the sun was coming up, they released balloons and put her ashes out in the ocean. And that's kind of from there. Then we had to start dealing with, when was there going to be a trial? What was going to happen with Will? My sister's gone. We want justice. And he goes to Seminole County Jail. And I'm sorry, during his stay there, he gets new glasses. He gets to eat his meals. He gets to watch TV. And because it took a year and a half before the trial even happened. If you guys know the justice system, nothing happens overnight. It's a drawn out process, witnesses, testimony, evidence. There was 100 pieces of evidence. The camera from the pawn shop, the work history, just everything. And we finally went to trial in September of 2008. Or no, it was June of 2008. I'm sorry, when the trial started, and it took several days. And I felt so bad for her kids because they had to sit in that courtroom as witnesses with him, the murderer, sitting feet away. So here they are in the same courtroom with him, having to look at him during this trial. And they had warned my mom and family that there were going to be pictures of my sister, that they could leave the courtroom. We could leave the courtroom if we chose to. And that was hard. That was very hard. And the gun, they had the gun, they had some of the ammo. So days of testimony. I mean, it was obvious, and he had even admitted it in the cop car. This was all planned out. He had planned this probably weeks ahead of time. Finally got his money to go buy that gun. And so the trial took several days. Of course, I got to read the family statement, how it affected all of our lives. Because I'm the oldest sister, and I'm supposed to be the protector, and I'm supposed to take care of my younger siblings. And the guilt, you just can't shake the guilt that could I have done something different? I mean, I'm thinking she's safe living with my mom, and she wasn't safe. It was the most volatile time, the scariest time in a domestic violence relationship is when the victim leaves the murderer, when the victim leaves the partner that's being abusive. That is the scariest time in the relationship. And when we moved her out, that was the last straw. I did not realize that at the time. We just cared about Trisha's well-being. So the trial happens. He gets at the end of the trial, there was a 12-person jury, of course. The state's attorney asked us, do we want the death penalty since it was premeditated? Do we want life in prison? We all discussed it, and we decided that, well, if my sister can't live and breathe, that he should not live and breathe either. I know that I know some people don't believe in the death penalty. I understand that, and it's a touchy subject, but we look at it as, he was a coward and wouldn't kill himself. So, and he admits doing it, and he has no remorse whatsoever. why not just let the state, put him to death? But little did we know how long. There are people on death row, in Florida's death row, that have been there for 20 to 30 years. I looked, of course, I did a lot of research, looked it up. There's a man on death row that's been there since the 80s. And I'm just like, holy cow, what takes so long for this process? So the jury came back unanimous. No, they came back 11-1. One of the jurors wanted life in prison. Of course, the rest of them were death. The jury was only out of the courtroom, I swear to you, 5 minutes. We all got up and left. The jury went out. We were in the lobby. We got drinks of water. They go, the jury's back. It was less than 10-minute turnaround. We go back in the court, and of course, they find him guilty of premeditated murder, premeditated attempted murder on my mom's life, putting others' lives in danger. So the judge, a female judge, it was her first death penalty case. Donna White was his judge, and she upheld and said, yes, we find you guilty of premeditated murder. We sentence you to death. So we had a little, sigh of relief that day. So they take him to Rayford, Florida, where one of the death row prisons, and he's been there ever since. Breathing, eating. They get out of their cell, I think, twice a week. And then we get the letter from the state after, I don't know if you remember, Mary, the Supreme Court, they came back with to uphold a death penalty, there had to be a unanimous jury vote. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
So we get a letter and it tells us, well, his verdict was 11-1, and we're going, oh man, but he had signed some kind of document that said he didn't want any appeals, that he was satisfied with the verdict, that he didn't care. So because he signed that document, they upheld his death penalty verdict, which we were relieved because we were worried that, oh no, his wasn't unanimous. It's going to get overturned. But luckily, with all the paperwork and documentation, he's still sitting there on death row, waiting for the day they decide to put the needle in his arm.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in January of 2009 when he was sentenced. So see, you have the initial act of violence, then you have the anger process, the grieving process, the acceptance process, if you ever go through that. Then you have the trial a year and a half later where everything's brought up again. Then you have the sentencing where everything's brought up again. So it is a multi-year process when it happens, like you said, Mary, with a domestic homicide, not like a heart attack or a car accident, but there's a lot of steps involved in a domestic homicide. And I carry that guilt with me. Did I do enough? My brother and her lived very close together, and he's like, well, why didn't I know? It's just, you ask why, like, why did it have to be her? I'm sure you want to know, why was it your sister? Why that act on that day at that time? Because you're just never thinking in a million years that that's going to affect my family.
Right.
That's other people's families. That's not my family. So I'm sorry for rambling, but
You're doing
talking about it is therapy.
it is.
Because you can't just go talk to anybody. I mean, I have a counselor, but they haven't been through what you and I have been through to understand your grieving process can come and go. And
Right. As a
you
friend,
know,
I truly am sorry and apologize for not being able to be there for you during that time. I was in my middle of my 30s.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it it is eye-opening to realize that other people's lives, they continue and they go on,
Yeah.
and they don't realize how
Yeah.
hard it is for us that have to go through a domestic homicide, that the
Yeah.
grieving process does not end quickly, and that, you know, you truly find who your friends are. And a lot of people you lose because either they don't know what to say, or they
Yeah.
don't know how to handle it, or they don't, they can't accept that you're not the one to go out to the
Yeah.
parties with anymore.
Yeah.
And I truly am so sorry. I feel a lot of guilt now that I've experienced
No.
it myself, to
Yeah.
miss that opportunity to be a true friend to you and be there during your time of tragedy.
Well, and I know some people reached out briefly. We didn't have the same social opportunities, media opportunities then in 2006. So I think of that 18 years ago.
Right.
The big chunky computers. I don't even know if phones had text messaging, but a few people heard and reached out. And I don't blame you one bit, Mary, because again, I was 40, was I like 44 years old? I was getting ready to adopt a child, which I did at the age of 45. So that was right after my sister's. Matter of fact, I was going to parenting classes to be a foster parent when all of this happened. So that all got put on hold. So then, which doesn't relate to this story at all, but my niece got pregnant, and it was a tough situation for her, and she asked me if I'd raise, you know, her daughter as my own. So that's how I became a mother at the age of 45. I know you can relate to that.
Yes.
Um, I'm thinking, what am I doing? I'm 45 years old. Why do I want to raise a child now?
Right.
I mean, and I'm like, uh, I'm old enough to be a grandmother. What am I doing? But it's been a blessing with her. Um,
Those school meetings are quite fun. Oh, is your grandchild here? Awesome.
yes.
Oh, those are my kids.
Yeah, they go, yeah, are you the grandmother? No, I'm the mom. And they just kind of hesitate, like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And she's mixed. So that also raises an eyebrow. Like, oh, okay, this is your child? Like, yes.
Best
So,
thing that ever happened in our lives, though. I wouldn't change that for the world, but it is quite interesting to be in your 40s with children.
I'm six, here she's it's going to be 17 and I'm 63. And, I'm a great aunt. And, but she called, I've been mom. I raised her as me being her mom. I didn't want to confuse her. She knows who her birth mother is now,
Right.
but, she never got to meet my sister. She's heard the story over and over again. She goes, I wish I would have known Aunt Trish. I said, you would have loved Aunt Trish.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so that's just the second part of my life. But you go through a mental change. Life you don't take for granted anymore. I don't know if you feel the same way,
Yeah.
but we could be here today and gone tomorrow.
Right.
And I'm
And
sure my sister had no idea that that was going to be her last night alive. I mean, you don't leave the house going, "Oh, I may not come home tonight."
right.
You just don't. We don't think like that.
Yeah. Everything for me is the pre homicide and after homicide. So everything is completely different. The way I
Yeah.
think, the way that I process, values my, I was a workaholic
Yeah.
too. I still am a workaholic, but when I'm with my kids, when I'm with my family, when I'm with the people that I love and care for,
Yeah.
I try to take those times. I try to go out to lunches with friends, because
Yeah.
those times are never guaranteed for the future. And
You,
it
yeah.
definitely has put a change in how
Yes.
my viewpoints. Um,
You
Go
you
ahead.
look at life totally different.
You.
You do, and every time we see my mother, and the struggles she's had, her surviving that, but the emotional trauma, and she's had since the shooting, her health has diminished. She hasn't driven a day since the shooting. She's afraid to drive. So she hasn't driven a car. She of course didn't work anymore. Um, and then her health declined. She's had both breasts removed to breast cancer. She has severe osteoporosis. She's broken her hip. She's broken her elbow. She's fallen down. So her health has taken a toll. Or I'm sorry, the shooting and going through that has taken its toll on my mother. So, you know, it just goes on and on. You
Right.
know, the whole thing just goes. I often wonder what my mom would be like today, had that not happened. Because she's a totally different person. So, but I
Emotionally,
think,
how has she been able to handle the last 18 years, losing a child, but also, the physical
yeah.
challenges, the emotional being able to, look in the mirror at her
hmm
signs of
Um, well, tell you this way: we've never seen her cry. You know how some people grieve differently.
yes.
Some people are very emotional and get the initial crying done. I mean, I still cry 18 years later,
Me too.
but and then some people hold it in. Some people want to talk about it. Others don't want to talk about it. My niece was so traumatized when they asked her on the stand to identify him. She couldn't even point at him. It was so traumatic that this man who murdered her mother, she couldn't even identify him in the courtroom. That's how traumatic it was for them. Um, so with the grieving process of my mother, I don't even know if she's really taken the time to grieve. Um, we've never really seen her cry. Now she may cry when she's alone, but she's had so many other things going on in her life. And my Down syndrome sister, um, who was very close to Trish would take her shopping all the time. Robin was like, well, I want to write Sissy Trish a letter. So we'd have her write Trish a letter and tell her we'd send it to heaven. And that's a whole nother piece of it, is just keeping the family, trying to keep the family unit together. We became very close. Um, and like you said, you don't take life for granted anymore. Um, my whole demeanor at work, teaching my students changed. I was able to share with them a domestic violence story of how it affected my life. I had a student write a letter for the school newspaper about my story. So I'm hoping that with your platform, and that people are listening and can get the help before it's too late. Reaching out to these resources. There's so many more resources now. Harbor House. Um, and the ironic thing is, I had Harbor House come in and speak to my kids about domestic violence and how to get out of a relationship. Um, and I'm just sitting there listening to the speaker, never thinking that was gonna, that I'm gonna have to deal with this. So it does leave its marks, and we don't have closure. You don't have closure. I
Oh,
can't believe that your sister's husband only got 10 years. That is mind boggling to me, how he got away with just 10 years.
with the
That,
possibility of parole in 5. So
that,
it is
this,
shocking.
that, I get goosebumps. Like, how does Texas have the death penalty?
They do, but because he was found guilty by sudden passion, that was
Oh,
the
God.
reason that it was an impulsive, even though,
Oh, my
it was
God.
recorded for 38 minutes. So there was nothing sudden about a 38-minute video record.
Jesus.
But I want to go back and ask a couple questions in regards to how long was Trish? I also call my sister Trish.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
How long was Trish and William together prior to this?
Um, let's see. Wow. I want to say, not, because he took her to get married and we didn't even know she got married. He took her away to some, I don't know, remote place because she goes, well, we're married. I'm going, when did you get married? Nobody in the family except her kids knew she got married. So I'm going to guess that they were together maybe 5 years. It wasn't, and I don't know how up and down the relationship was, because again, we had a hard time tracking her down. So it was a hush hush marriage, which kind of surprised us.
Well, that's part of the narcissistic
Yes.
behavior.
Yeah.
Everything is controlled, including, the beginning of the relationship.
Hmm.
Was there any reported cases of domestic violence in their relationship? Was anything reported to the
I
police?
I don't, to my knowledge, I don't think so. Other than the stalking, my mom's phone calls, her work, asking him to leave. I really don't believe my sister had the courage enough to call the police. She was scared to death. Um, that, protecting her kids. So, but just the fact that he was stalking her, her best friend, Trisha's best friend, happened to be married to Will's brother. So they were very close. Um, and I'm sure Tammy knew some of the signs, but Trish kept those quiet. She didn't really make a big deal out of it, because I can just imagine, knowing my sister and how passive she was. Not like me. She was the opposite of me, very passive, and probably did not make any calls to the police. Her kids did say that he threatened her with a gun before, um, but I'm almost positive that she did not call the police on him at all.
Wow. What about a criminal history? Was there any criminal history of William with any sort of violence?
Um, Not to my knowledge. His his brother, um, his younger brother, I think it was either, no, wait, maybe it was his older brother, married to my sister's best friend, passed away for some reason. So Will was the only, and his sister never talked to him, so they were estranged. They had to subpoena his own father. His own father did not want to come testify on his behalf. They had to subpoena his father to come to court, or he would be arrested, to say, what kind of childhood did William grow up with? And the dad had to say, well, he saw me and his mom fight, um, blah blah blah. And then Will started drinking at a young age. Matter of fact, the defense attorney tried to say that Will was in a intoxicated blackout state and doesn't remember the shooting. And we rolled up, we laughed like, are you kidding me? His defense was he blacked out and had no idea that he shot anybody. And I'm so glad the state blew that wide open,
Right.
um, because you had the wherewithal to go buy a gun. You were in the pawn shop that long, you walk up, da da da. So that was a bunch of baloney. Um, so luckily, his intoxication defense did not work.
Right.
Um, so I just know that he was a drinker. I don't know of any other relationships, because again, we did not know a whole lot about him because everything was quiet. Um, Hush hush. So I don't know if he had a history of that or not.
So the
He,
state didn't find any past
I
women.
don't think I don't recall I don't recall them having any other um, instances with Will, having violent relationships or abusive relationships. Matter of fact, she could have been, being in their 30s, she could have been his first relationship, as far as I know.
Right.
I didn't hear anything about his past at all, other than his mother being killed by a drunk driver and his brother dying. That could have been a catalyst. Those could have been a catalyst for him drinking more. I have no idea. I don't really care.
Right.
ab-
And
ab-
I often think about the snowball effect of my own sister's case. It
Yeah.
was COVID. They were stuck in the house together for a longer period
Oh, yeah.
of time than they were used to. There was an incident that happened where a golf cart accident caused a legal issue for them that added to the stresses, their work, but drinking, all of those life issues,
Yeah.
those are just excuses. Those
Yeah.
excuses does not give you the right to take someone's life. And um, so I know you mentioned about the death penalty and how it is a very political subject.
Yes.
I truly believe that that is something that if you take someone's life, that we need to have the death penalty
Yeah.
as a possible result to that. Will you, if the day comes that he is scheduled for death, will you participate in that?
Yes. Yes, I've thought about that. I doubt seriously any of her kids will want to go. They're done with him. They never want to see him again. But I do, just for family closure. I do want to be there. I don't care if I'm in a wheelchair at 85 years old. I do want to be there just for the satisfaction that it happened, and it will there ever be closure? I don't know. I don't know if there's ever closure, but so I doubt seriously that any of her kids would want to go. My mom, if she's alive, I'm sure she would want to go. But I don't know. Uh, Mentally, she may not be able to handle the traveling to, where they put them to death. So yes, I do plan on being there. And when we do get the date, if we ever get the date, you'll be the first one to know, Mary. And I'll be like, Mary, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. They're putting the needle in his arm, all these years later.
Well, and if you need someone to go with you, I will be the first sitting next to you, and we can
Okay.
go and have that experience together. So
Okay. Okay.
I
Okay. Then.
sincerely state that. So, um, I know it's been 18 long years and a lot have changed, as you mentioned, with different support. One of the support groups that I'm involved with, bereaved survivors of homicide, sadly, you didn't even know about. Was
No.
any outreach to you by, the county or by the social workers out there? Was there
Um,
anything that was offered to you through community services that were able to help you 18 years ago?
um, well, there was a victim's advocate from the state assigned to the case. And, if you need anything, let us know. They did offer going up to Tallahassee at Christmas time and hanging an angel on the tree for her. They offered some things like that in remembrance, but there were no marches. There were no. I didn't know of any support groups at the time. I didn't reach out to any support groups. In hindsight, they may have helped, but I did know about Harbor House, but I did not know that there were actual groups where you could go and sit and talk and share your story. So sharing the story with my students was kind of some therapy. But just sitting in a group and having those actual community outreach, I didn't know what the options were. I didn't seek out any options. But we did hear from the state. The state's like, well, we're here if you need us, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you're in Tallahassee. How can you help us if you're in Tallahassee,
Well, there's definitely groups now. And sadly, it is a group that no one ever wants to be part of.
Yeah, right.
You don't get to sign up for it. You kind of just automatically join it once you have this terrible tragedy occur in your family. But yes, there are groups. I'm surprised that more people don't take advantage of it. Personal counseling was not the answer for me.
Right.
I like to speak to others and help others when I can,
Yeah.
that have gone through it. And,
Yeah.
that is a way of communicating that, unless you've been through it, you're really never going to understand. And
Exactly.
we hope that all of the individuals that may listen to this podcast, that if they
Hmm.
haven't gone through it, that we hope they never really
I
understand
have
the
to go through it.
language,
Yeah.
because it is something that is very terrible, very just the the
Life changing.
obstacles. It is
Yeah.
life changing. It is life changing. So the kids are doing well.
Um, they're all happily in relationships. They have kids. They
Healthy
they have
relationships.
they're healthy, yes, healthy relationships. My niece has always wanted to be a mother, and like my sister loved being a mother. That was the number one thing in her life, was being a mom. And my niece has 5 children. She took,
Oh,
so she has 5 kids. My nephews each have children. Um, every every year on Facebook, the anniversary date, they'll post something in memory of their mom. Um, we were in contact with them. Her youngest son, who was 13 at the time, he keeps in contact because they remember being with my mom and the times that Rachel needed a helping hand, and so they reach out to us. We've had birthdays, weddings, gatherings. My niece, she's kind of become a reclusive. She doesn't go on Facebook. It's been very hard to keep in touch with her, but I think she suffered the most trauma than any of them. Her oldest sons weren't there at the time, but Rachel was standing right next to her. And you can just imagine if your niece was standing right next to her mother who got blown away,
right,
just uh, how her life, has been. Um, but we made sure that, you know, they were taken care of and they're healthy. They're living their life the best they can. And of course, they're never going to forget her. Um, but, having to go on without your mom, being taken in that way. And
right,
I can imagine the guilt of her oldest son going, "Why couldn't I protect my mom?" You can just imagine the thoughts at 18, that he had, like, gosh, I'm the oldest and my mom, was within this relationship. Um, I can empathize with him on how he feels about not being able to protect his mother
right.
from
We
a
know
murderer. Yeah,
we know that um
yeah,
he should not have that guilt, that these
yeah,
individuals, they're set out to, take the
yeah.
life of someone else. There's really,
You
no
can't stop
one
him.
person can, protect
Right.
that from happening. I am just, again, I'm grateful for you participating on the podcast and sharing your story. I apologize for not being there 18 years ago for
Oh,
you.
yeah.
I know you were such an amazing teacher, even back in the days when I knew you regular. I
Hmm.
can't imagine how many people you have influenced and changed their lives with sharing the
Yeah.
story. With how many years did you work in the public school system?
38. I just retired in June, so I'm living the
Wow,
retirement life.
that is amazing. And so,
Yeah,
congratulations and thank you for
yeah,
all that you've done to help
yeah,
many, many students, I'm sure.
yeah. It's and being able to do that through my work has helped tremendously.
Right.
Um, Knowing that if you can change one, teachers always say this: if you can change one student's life, then it was worth the effort. So
Well,
hopefully, I changed more than one in the thousands that I've taught.
I have no doubt that you have. I have no doubt whatsoever. I definitely want to welcome you back as anything comes up with the
Yeah.
sentencing of William, being scheduled for death. Um,
Hmm.
before and or after, you are always
Right.
welcome to, share your thoughts on the podcast. And I hope you'll join me at the next BSH group. We do both in person and virtual.
Oh, you
So
do virtual. Good.
we
Because
do, we do.
I would love to do virtual. Now, is
Yeah.
there a weekly, is it a weekly meeting?
So it's the first and third Wednesday of every month. So
And what time frame is that?
6:30, but I'll
Oh,
get you all of the
okay.
information.
Okay.
But that being said, anyone that is listening that
Yeah.
needs to find a support group, please reach out to me. Let me know that whether you're in the Central Florida area or somewhere else, I hope to grow my network and hope to find opportunities for people to find that support of people that have gone through the tragedies that we have. I also welcome anyone that does have a story to share, that you reach out. Love to have you share your story and bring awareness that this can happen to any of us. It doesn't matter, what
Yep.
part of the country you live in, race, domestic homicide happens every economic status. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter what your
Yep.
beliefs are. So it is going to be something that unfortunately is not going to go away. We are going to
Yeah.
continue to see the stories in the news every single day. And until we start talking about it and bringing awareness and saying that, if you see the red flags, let's develop an exit
Yeah.
strategy. Let's not share that exit strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And sometimes unfortunately, you thought that your mom's home was a safe haven.
Yep.
Sometimes
Yep.
we have to think even further than that, that the safe haven may have to be a place where, the
Yeah.
the person that is looking to harm knows
Yep.
nothing about or where it's at. So,
Yeah.
we just have to keep talking and providing information and sharing our
Mhm.
stories. Hopefully will prevent others from having to go through and be part of the storytelling. So
Yeah.
thank you so
Absolutely.
much, Pam.
You're welcome, Mary. And don't
I
even get me started on gun control because that's a whole nother, well, that's a whole nother podcast, gun control.
we can definitely get that scheduled and talk about that too. So
Yeah.
thank you
Wow.
so much, and we'll hopefully stay in touch at this point.
Yes.
You were a friend back then. You've been a friend ever since. We lost contact, and I'm
Yes.
so grateful that you're back part of my life. You're very, very
Yeah.
important to me.
Thank you, Mary. I
Thank
appreciate it. And yes, we do need to stay in touch. And
Yes.
when I get that final date, I will definitely let you know, and we'll
Absolutely.
make a beeline to the prison.
There we go. Real fast, how is Robin doing? Because I do remember Robin.
Yeah. You remember Robin? She is and you don't know how a Down syndrome person grieves. That's been the hardest thing because we go, should Robin get counseling? I'm like, well, what would the counselor say to her? We let her write letters. She's still today. Oh, matter of fact, real quick, just a real quick, she was on the job. They get her jobs, grocery
Right.
stores,
Yep.
bagging groceries and taking the carts out. Well, uh, within a year or so after it happened, a man came into the store and bought some groceries, and Robin was supposed to take his cart out, and he looked like Will, and she refused to take the
Oh.
cart out to the parking lot. She goes, no, no, that looks like Will. No, I'm not doing it. So
Oh.
yeah. So she feels the loss. She, of course, is doing okay. She still lives with my mom. I'm next in line to, when my mom can't handle Robin anymore, then Robin's going to become, my responsibility. But she's 42, loving life.
Good.
We'll never, we'll always talks about, she goes, don't talk about Trish, please. I'm like, okay. Because, she grieved too in her own way. So,
Right.
but we are looking out for her and mom, and we're coping best we can.
That is great.
So
She was always such a lovely young lady. She was a girl at that time, but
yeah. Oh yeah, she was,
so
well,
young.
yeah, it's hard to believe she's 42 chronologically, but
Yeah,
mentally she'll always be that young teenager,
right.
in her 20s. Um but we keep an eye on her.
Good.
She's in Longwood. They're not far away. So we're all within, thing is, we're all within 20 miles of each other. So we didn't stray too far. I'm the one that came over to Ocoee, and they're the ones in Seminole County. So I'm the one that spread my wings
Flew a little bit.
a
So,
little bit.
all right. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day, Pam. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mary. God
Bye.
bless.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.